Kevin Borba of Locked On Buffs. From Brett McMurphy today, the over-under win totals set by Circa Sports Las Vegas for the Big 12. At the top of the conference, tied. 8.5, over-under 8.5 wins for Arizona State, Kansas State, Texas Tech. That is the top tier of the Big 12 per Las Vegas. Here's the craziest part to me. BYU, Kansas, Utah, all tied in that second tier, alongside Baylor and Iowa State. They have Utah and BYU at 7.5 over-under wins this season. Colorado sits right at 6, a fringe bowl team, if you ask Vegas. Houston is at 6.5. They have more faith in Houston this year than Deion Sanders-led Colorado, and then everything is rounded out by Arizona, UCF, Oklahoma State, West Virginia, down there at the bottom. What stands out to you the most about this? Because, again, my big storyline is BYU and Utah being right there even. That's crazy to me. For you, what stands out?
For me, it's the fact that it's basically they view Colorado as a bowl team or they don't, right? That is the question at hand. It's like, is Colorado a bowl team? That's what we're betting on, right? It's not like, is Colorado going to follow up a 9-win season with a 8-win season? It's like, this team is a fringe bowl team is how Vegas views them. Now, Vegas has been super right on things before, and they've also been super wrong, like Arizona State last year, right? I think everyone and their moms had them as like, was it 16th team in the conference? And then remind me of how they did. I think they did okay, right?
Yeah, they were okay.
They were okay. They were at least okay, right? They made the playoff, won the Big 12, all that jazz. No, I think Colorado's win total projection is kind of a result of their schedule, right? I'm looking at their stretch from September 27th to November 1st, and I think that's sort of where their season will be made or broke, if you will. They play BYU.
Which is most of the season. You've just given me a very large swath of season.
Yeah. It is. And like that's sort of where I think they'll make or break their season, right? They play BYU, then they go at TCU, then they play Iowa State. So they're playing two of the projected top teams in the Big 12, and then they have to go to Utah on the road, and then Arizona, and then at West Virginia, right? So it's a very tough stretch, and I think Colorado had a stretch like this last year as well, where it looked really challenging at the front end of the season, and then once we got there, it was like, oh, Utah's quarterbacks don't know if they're right-handed or left-handed. Oh, Oklahoma State's running back is driving while busy.
Intoxicated.
Okay, we went there. But
it's
no.
What a DUI is, Borba. It is what that DUI is.
And then to end the season, Drake, they go Arizona State, Kansas State. So they're currently projected to play 4 ranked teams, right? And so this is assuming that all of these teams are as good as they were last year. And if that's the case, all those teams stayed relatively good and Colorado lost a lot of talent. So I think I understand the odds, but it's basically like, do you trust Deion Sanders to get this team to a bowl game is the question here.
What Vegas is telling me about the entire conference with this is Arizona State, Kansas State, Texas Tech being tied at the top, but only at 8.5. They're kind of saying, hey, look, we expect the winner of the Big 12 to be 9-3 this season, which wouldn't be the craziest thing. And then usually, like the SEC, it'll be Georgia over under 11.5 wins, over under 10.5 wins, something an astronomical number because they'll probably win all of their regular season games. But then they'll have over under 2.5 wins for Vanderbilt or Mississippi State. In the Big 12, the worst team in this conference is a win away from bowl eligibility. West Virginia, Oklahoma State, both projected at 5, over under 5 wins in football this season. I think that while the top of the Big 12 doesn't get a ton of love, I think that just shows the depth of this conference, that we even think that these schools who were 3-9 last year or replacing a head coach could surprise a lot of people and make a bowl game.
Yeah, I think it shows that the Big 12 from top to bottom is probably the most competitive conference, right?
I think so.
I don't think that that's a stretch, right? If you look at the ACC, the top of it is Clemson. The bottom of it is Florida State, Stanford, right? Florida State, Stanford. Those teams were 3-9, 2-10 last year. I think the bottom of the Big 12 probably beats them. The SEC has always been this way. They just have a superior marketing team known as the 4-letter conglomerate. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you may be familiar with them, the 4-letter conglomerate. Drake was actually on the 4-letter conglomerate the other day. Shout out to Drake Toll. But the SEC's bottom half has always been terrible, right? It has always been the top half, the Alabama, the Georgia, the Texas now, LSU, that sort of carries the rest of them. Whereas the Big 12, I mean, Drake, we're looking at a world where it's kind of, I don't know if it's mathematically possible, but there's going to be well over half these teams that could be playing for a bowl game. Possibly all the teams, if it's mathematically possible. I guess they could all go 6-6, right?
Yeah. I would hate that.
I will. Yes, that would be terrible. That would be terrible for all things Big 12. But I do think the Big 12 doesn't get the credit it deserves for being a deep conference. But at the same time, I think that's sort of what hurts it at times, right? That's where it's like we need a dominant team.
Yeah. Yes and no.
Okay.
Because yes for the Big 12, but then you make the case the SEC is so top heavy, and they've got a really good thing going for them when it comes to the top 2 or 3 teams just winning all the games they're supposed to win. Then last season, Ole Miss loses to Kentucky. Alabama loses to Vanderbilt. You're starting to see these Tennessee loses to Arkansas. These top end SEC schools lose to middle or bottom of the pack squads in their own league. So I'm curious. You didn't see it as much in the Big Ten, but I'm curious to know if college football, because of the parity that's here, because of the transfer portal and NIL, what that's created, if we're going to start seeing more of an NFL-like format of upsets, right? It's not out of the realm of possibility that one weekend the Dolphins beat the Bills in Miami. You're like, the Dolphins weren't very good and the Bills are elite. Yeah, but it's the NFL. It's just kind of the way it goes. Hey, the Browns snuck up on somebody this week because that's the way the NFL goes. I believe we're starting to see that in college football with the amount of upsets that we got last season, just because the talent field is leveling out a ton. And man, I'm on a soapbox now. What I mean by that is used to Western Kentucky, I'll bring them up again, had 5 players that could probably start in the SEC. Only 5, so it meant they weren't a very good football team in the grand scheme of things, but they had 5 guys that could go in the transfer portal, but it was just tough to transfer. You had to sit out a year. Today, now those 5 guys are on SEC rosters. So now that the playing field at the top is so even that Arkansas isn't near as far away from Alabama as they were 10 years ago. Same is true for, I think, every major conference in college football. And you're going to start seeing less success out of Boise State, Western Kentucky for that reason. But with that, I'm hopeful. Hope is a fickle thing in this. It's terrible. I'm hopeful that the College Football Playoff Committee will recognize that and see the Big 12, just because it has a lot of parity, doesn't mean it's a bad league. It's just how we're looking at college football in the modern era,
Yeah, I think when it comes to College Football Playoff Committee, it's like, are they going to start valuing the hypothetical games again? Who knows, right? Yeah. But I do think there's a reason that there's such a push for playoff expansion. I think there's a reason that there's a push for automatic bids, is because all of these programs across the country, all of these athletic directors are seeing exactly what you're seeing, Drake, which is things are balancing out. Nick Saban himself, I think he left college football, who's not, what is he, like the czar of college football, the dictator?
He's the Pope. He's the Pope.
There was white smoke, and it was Nick Saban who was picked. But he himself was not able to retain his roster because guys don't want to wait anymore. So there's a lot of movement and the talent distribution. Like, those schools are still getting top guys, but they're not getting them and keeping them, right? They're losing them. Like, Alabama lost a 5-star, 4-star wide receiver to Ole Miss, right? They lost, I think they lost like 4 wide receivers in the transfer portal, right? They lost a ton. And so there's guys like that who it's like, we want to play elsewhere, but we still want to play at big programs. And so the writing is on the wall that college football is more competitive and possibly as deep as it's ever been. And I think that's why there's such a push for expansion, automatic bids. And I think that's why these SEC and Big Ten conferences are trying to throw their brands on the table and be like, hey, we're the biggest brands. We should get the most bids. It's because they recognize, like, hey, our top teams are not beating the living you-know-what out of our bottom teams anymore. Like, Kentucky beat Ole Miss, right? Arkansas, like you mentioned, beat Tennessee, and that was a playoff team. And, like, I think it scares teams to not have assurance that, like, hey, just because everyone's good now doesn't mean, like, we still don't deserve that special treatment, right?
Yeah. Well, college football today, that seems to be how every conversation ends. It's just like, well, I guess we're screwed.
133 team playoff. Who says no?
Mike Leach says yes. In his honor, we'll call it the Mike Leach Invitational, and we'll play it every year instead of this BS where they're going to go 16 teams and 4 bids, and you play a tournament in your conference to see who's going to go to. It's all so messed up. Kevin Borba, where can folks find more of your work?
Yeah, you can find me over on Athlon Sports, covering all things college football, NBA, WNBA as the season kicks off. And then, of course, over at Locked On Buffs, I'm covering Deion Sanders and the Buffaloes every single day as we try to navigate the new era of Coach Prime.
Yeah, you can hit subscribe, and that would be cool. This has been and always will be Locked On. Thanks for making it your first listen every single day. A crossover with Buffs and Dose Grande.